I was watching this video essay. It starts off by the hook, I guess, in this video was going to people and asking them how many more times more money does the CEO of different corporations make than their average employee. And the Lowe's CEO makes something like 520 times more money per year than their average employee. And the McDonald's one was something crazy like 1,271 or something. Ridiculously more money than the average employee at these companies. What I liked about this video was that it wasn't just about that hook, right? Because I think the trap that a lot of people fall into is they point that out and then they just complain about why that's an issue without talking about anything kind of tangible or concrete or useful. And so the utility of this video came in knowing, like, people were guessing. They thought, like, their numbers were so far off. They thought, 3 times as much. The highest guess was like 11 times the amount, not 1,000 times the amount. And so that alone is eye-opening. But then they introduce the history that sort of precedes this. And corporate America, as we know it today, like the modern form of it, really doesn't get established until the 80s. It didn't have the reach or the scope or the influence that it did until the 80s. Reagan did a lot of this. But the 60s, I guess maybe you have to say it's the 60s when it really starts. The modern form kind of takes shape in the 80s after Reagan, but corporations as we know them got their foundations in like the 60s. And between from the 60s to the 80s, that period, pretty consistently CEOs were making 25 times as much as their average employee. And then when you go and dissect what was going on and how the companies were run, and the decision making and the policy behind it, you learn a lot about what's going on today and why everything going on today is so fucked up. So from the 60s to the 80s, 25 times, it's still a lot more, but that's still, I would say, within a reasonable sort of value to the company type of metric. But the thing about it was, during that period, what those CEOs would do with the profits, it was a lot of reinvestment into innovation and improving processes, which ultimately meant investing in people. And so that was higher wages or more employees, and you're competing with this competitive market. So employee wages were going up, and they were improving the efficiency of the employees while the employees were benefiting from that. Notably, during that period, and this is a thread that becomes central to the whole thing, during that period, the idea, the concept, the practice of stock buybacks, that was illegal. And then you hit Reagan. And Reagan, in his infamous deregulation, Reaganomics, among a number of things that you could, do a different video with, equally significant consequences. One of the things that his deregulation did was to make stock buybacks legal. And kind of the background behind that is also like relevant today, with Trump in office and the people that he has surrounded himself with. Reagan hired a Wall Street guy to be the head of the SEC. He was the one that got this kind of long-standing ban on stock buybacks to become legal. So for some context, what stock buybacks ultimately do, and it's better with a visual, but simple economics here is you have a certain number of stocks available in a market, right? And it's a simple supply and demand thing here. What a stock buyback essentially is the company purchasing a number of those shares back from the shareholders, right? And so what that effectively does is reduces the number of shares in circulation to the public. So it artificially creates a scarcity of those shares, which immediately in the short term boosts the price of the stocks. Because there's fewer of them, the value of them just goes up simply through the company buying back a number of shares available. And so the reason why this has been illegal for so long is pretty obvious and easily visible. Like, if you think about, logically what should happen in order for a stock price to increase, the company has to have become more valuable in some way. They have innovated in some way. They have reduced costs in some way, right? They have a new product offering, something along those lines. But the stock buybacks don't require this. They can boost their price, the value of their stock, simply by purchasing it. And this extends into additional problematic areas as well, notably in incentives. And so after this decision, after the stock buybacks became popular, almost immediately, one of the things that shareholders started doing in order to ensure that a CEO would be acting on behalf of the interest of the shareholders, again, that alone is problematic. They want to ensure that the shareholders are ultimately who is looked after, not the employees, not the consumers, but the shareholders are the priority. In order to ensure that, what they started doing was paying CEOs in stocks. And so if you look today, the numbers are pretty amazing. Microsoft CEO, 90% of their salary is in Microsoft stock. Apple, like Tim Cook, was like 70%. Lowe's is 70%, something like that. McDonald's, I think, was like 80 or maybe. So the CEO's income, their salary, is dependent on share value. Additionally, if they reach certain stock improvement milestones, they get bonuses. So those bonuses are also tied. So their incentives, their personal incentives as a CEO, are attached to stock price value. And so it's so easy. It's such a human nature obvious thing. What is a CEO going to do in that position when they can easily just buy back a bunch of shares and jack up their stock price, makes the shareholders happy, and boost their personal wealth? Obviously, that's what they're going to do. And what I find interesting about all of this is this alone accounts for a number of things that people continue to talk about, which for me is, the lack of innovation in products. You look at Apple and the iPhone. They went from totally reshaping, innovating. Phones were making these great leaps with each, iteration, to a complete standstill in the look, feel, and experience of it. And it's not exclusive to Apple or tech in general. All companies are doing this same thing. I think, big culprits are like the big box retailers, because all of the products that they're housing on top of their business, right? The products that they're housing are operating under the same business model too. And so the quality of the products are not only like, there's not innovation in those products, but in a lot of cases, degradation, a setback in quality. Furniture, for example, price, especially if you're adjusting for inflation and things like that, what you're paying for what you're getting and the utility of the thing that you're getting, it's enraging. And so, and it touches so many different things too. They got into, this quest for profits over everything, and a value of stock price over everything, right? That means the price is stock price is the ultimate indicator of how you're doing and the health of your company, not, the value for the consumer or the quality of work for the employees. And so despite record-breaking profits, Starbucks, Target, Lowe's, Home Depot, Apple, they're not hiring enough people at their stores, so their employees are overworked and underpaid. The quality of their products are going, like, it's just all terrible. And so there's like, from here, that's kind of where this wraps up, and I actually ended it because I didn't want to have their conclusion be my conclusion, but it leaves me thinking about a few things. One, and this moment in time, current events, Trump's big beautiful bill was just passed, and it's ugly and really, really bad. It's not a big beautiful bill. It's a big pile of shit. There's so many different things that I'm thinking about. One is like a common criticism on the right, the red tape from the left and like all this regulation and shit. But like since we live in a pretty post-regulation era. I would argue maybe we've regulated it in all of the wrong ways. Like the reason why everything's so shitty, it's not because of the regulation. Like we already live in a kind of post-regulation era. Regulation is what made things great. That's how we built up. Another one of the things that I was thinking about is like how we assess everything. And one of the eye-opening things for me in life in general has been like the dogmatic thinking of people and this belief that experts are experts when they're really fucking phonies. And Wall Street, finance people, money people, they're the biggest phonies on the earth right now. And I hope more people will recognize this. This is something that I hope to shed light on and pass down, is these people think that they're so fucking smart and they're the ones blowing everything up. They're the cause, they're the root of the biggest issues. And it's been proven time and time again. You just have to look at 2008. There's plenty of research on that. But they showed clips, like interviews of people talking. There was an attempt to regulate these stock buybacks again. And there's this well-established precedent, this well-established history of that being illegal for reasons that have been outlined and are very easy to see. And when that was proposed in I think it was like 2020-ish maybe, everyone freaked out and they said it was an attack on democracy. But once you know the history, right, and the evidence that's there and the rationale behind it, it's so obvious that it forces you to realize that the people, and these are the experts that freaked out after, like they don't know the history of it. So they're like, one guy was like, I can't understand what this would be about. Why would you do this? It's like, it was illegal for these reasons. And those reasons became very apparent when we made it legal. This is just exposing your ignorance of the history of this and the logic behind it. It's very apparent. It's very obvious. Kind of the last thing I'll say, the final thought here is, the position that we're in right now and this doubling down on ideas like this that have these consequences that are like this and the trajectory that we're heading, right? To me, it's like you hear it and you feel the weight of it and it feels very depressing and dark and hopeless. But on some level, I think like there's gotta be a breaking point. If they continue to operate like this, continue to operate in these ways, and the trajectory is indicating this. There's a correlation with it in how tough it is for consumers, how shitty it is for workers. There's going to have to be a breaking point where consumers just can't afford those experiences. Like it's not sustainable. What we'll see likely, and what I don't know is like, is this connected to like the bubbles? And so does it actually still suck because it requires the bubbles to burst and severe economic hardship on the average people? But at the same time, like I think that means if that happens, these bubbles burst, all of those companies, the people that are doing this will be bleeding. Because if you reach this breaking point where like you've neglected your core product so much that people no longer, like it's not It's simply not worth it. For these big corporations, that's a massive, like, it's hard to stop that type of bleeding. Because not only is it like an immediate thing, people are switching to alternatives. The competitors who are doing it right, small businesses who are doing it right, that's where everyone's going to go. And it's going to be hard to win them back after that transition happens. So not only is it like, by the time you realize it, it's too late, because people, they won't acknowledge it until that shift has been significant enough for them to be like, oh shit, we fucked up. And who knows if they'll even be able to identify, because they're so fucking vain and whatever, if they'll be able to identify the real issue. And if not, fuck them. But yeah, even if they do, all of these people will have gone to the alternatives, and good luck trying to win them back after that.